But I don't think enough people know the power of checking in with yourself. We check in with everybody else. How are you doing? Right? Instead of
Yes.
saying, how am I doing?
Yep. And think about it. You check in with somebody. Why?
Because I want to know.
Because you want to know you care. So by default, if we're not checking in on ourselves, what are we saying?
Yeah.
That we don't care, that we don't want to know, that we don't matter. So then, if full circle here, we understand why we don't believe our genuine, authentic self is the best version, because every day we say we don't care and we're not important. So we've got to flip that script. And when you start showing up for yourself every day, even with those 10 minutes, your brain starts to go, shoot, I do matter. Yeah. You're starting with me in the morning. You're asking me how I feel before any other email, text, client issue. You must care. And that's huge.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Matt Halloran. We talk all the time about rising above the noise and being your own loud. But I realized not long ago that we talk about it a lot, but we've never brought anybody on the show who can help you figure out how to do it. And so I had the opportunity to be on Angie's show. This is Angie Wisdom, our guest today. And when we were just talking about her process and what she does, it's like, oh my God, what a great opportunity to bring somebody on who specializes in helping all of you experts out there figure out how to unapologetically be yourself. Now, she calls it a little bit different. We're going to talk about her language here in a minute. And to truly allow yourself that gift so you can rise above the noise to be your own loud. So Angie, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Well, I not trying to oversell you at the top of the show, but honestly, where does one even begin? I mean, I know you have an entire process, and I definitely want to talk about that. But what is step one in giving yourself that permission to be yourself? Now, you call it the non-negotiable you, right? Am I correct with that?
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. So where do we begin?
Gosh, I mean, there's a lot there, but the non-negotiable you, first of all, is this version of yourself that's truly capable of creating anything they want. And at the heart of it, it's got to be the authentic you. The one who knows who they are, the one who trusts themselves, the one who knows what they want and how to take responsibility to go get it every single day.
Yeah. One of the things that you had talked to me about, and of course I Googled the hell out of you and watched a bunch of your videos and stuff like that, is once you have the epiphany that this is the direction you need to go, and if you've been listening to 400 and some odd episodes of this, it's about time that you start figuring this out. But more importantly, one of the key metric or the key things that you have your clients do is spend time with themselves. Mm-hmm. And Angie, I know you know this, but that can be scary. So how do you help people prepare for that one-on-one time with themselves? And what do you talk to them about that they should do when they are in that kind of alone space where they're getting in touch with themselves?
Well, think about it. If we want to show up authentically every single day and be your own loud, we have to know who we are. That's the basis of all of this. And the way we grow up and society grooms us is that we constantly look for what other people want from us, who other people think we should be. So we grow up going, well, I'm not really who I am. I'm who he wants me to be. I'm who she wants me to be, right? So that's the norm. But if we start spending time with ourselves, then we get to know who we really are. And it is scary because there's a lot of stuff up here, right? I mean, and that we don't even examine. That's why I make it super simple. And I say, look, sit down with yourself every single morning for 5 to 10 minutes. I have some prompts that I give people in a journal, and it's really about creating self-awareness. How do I feel? What do I want to do about it? You know, what do I want out of my day today to get in the driver's seat? What am I grateful for? What do I visualize in my future? A couple of key questions that are really allow you to spend time with yourself, get to know yourself so that you can start going, oh, now I know who I am. Now I know what I want. Now I know what I need to do. So it really is that simple, 5 to 10 minutes. And when you have guided prompts like that, it's not so scary.
Yeah. Now, when I was a therapist, one of the things that we had studied, this was early on um, in the world of Asperger's and autism,
Mm.
so quite a while ago. Um, and one of the things that we were taught to address is something called masking, right?
Mm.
And so, and you had said that, well, this is how he or she wants me to be. There are social situations in which, actually, I should ask that as a question. Are there social situations in which you do need to filter the level of the you-ness? Do you support that, or do you think you should just go all in 100%?
That's a good question. And here's what I'll say about that. It's a slippery slope on when you say yes and when you say no. I mean, you
Mm.
know, from our conversation we had a few weeks ago, I come from the financial advisor
Mhm.
industry. So I called it being a chameleon. I was a darn good chameleon. I could show up as anyone who wanted me to and be able to win that business. It's exhausting. So I think you have to have your you-ness. You have to be genuine and authentic, but there's also something to be said about like reading the room, right? You can't necessarily come in like a bull in a china shop
Sure.
in certain environments. So you have to read the room and have some empathy, have some self awareness, but it doesn't mean you change who you are to decide this is what this person wants me to be.
I I look at it like a dial.
Hmm.
Like there are times, like for instance, and you do this also, if we're speaking on a main stage, you and I, we turn it up a little bit, right? But I have a baseline level that is the Mattness, that is the Kirkness, that is the mouthness that we really try to maintain true to yourself. Because you said something, and I have to go back to a word that you just used there because it's so important, which is you are exhausted, right?
Hmm.
It is so tiring to be somebody else. And for some of us, it was up until I was probably 45 years old before I really gave myself the gift of really being the non-negotiable Matt, being my own loud and really allowing myself to be me. Um, because I was the three-piece suit, watch wearing, super tight beard, it's terribly self-conscious about my balding, all of that sort of stuff. And man, I just woke up one day, and it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that you just said were those morning prompts were things I had implemented into my life. And because
Mm.
of those, I think it gave me the self-confidence to do that, which is my next question for you here, which is, um, what, because you grew up in financial services, because I know that you were very, very successful, um, what is stopping people from being their authentic self?
It's the fear that the authentic self isn't good enough to create what you want. It's the fear that somebody is going to reject your authentic self, and that's going to hurt, right? If we, as the word you use, mask something, and I say, well, I'm going to show up as I think this person needs me to be in order to get this business, and I get rejected, well, it's not truly me who got rejected. It's that version of myself that I put out there. So it's a little safer. It's a little less um, detrimental to the ego and to the mindset because you weren't even really you to begin with. But man, if I put myself out there as truly who I am and I'm vulnerable and I'm authentic, and then they don't want to work with me, that hurts. So I think it's scary for most people. And there really is this mindset. I mean, think about how we grew up in school. It's all about if you do it this way, you get the A, you get the pat on the back, you get to be the teacher's pet. So we've been groomed to say, do things a certain way to be accepted. And that's really, just ingrained in us. And until we start believing a different narrative, which I fully embraced when I changed my business that way,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to keep staying the same.
When it comes to giving yourself this gift, so and I want to talk a little bit more about your process here in just a minute. Um, there was this really, and I'm going to be very judgy here, so just bear with me.
Sure.
There's a really terrible book that came out called The Secret. It was all just, dream it and manifest it and it will come. And I think my personal opinion is I think that's all a whole bunch of hooey because you have to do some work, but whatever. But there was something that was really amazing that came out of that kind of movement, which was this like attracts like in this abundance mindset idea. Now, since you've given yourself this gift and you help financial services professionals become themselves, which we know will just absolutely exponentially increase their business, how do they find more people like them who've given themselves that gift so that they have a support structure in place so that when you are denied, which both you and I we experienced that in sales for many, many years, and it's hard to not take that personally. Where can you find people who have this gift or have given themselves this gift?
Such a great question because, and you probably go through the same thing. People ask all the time, like, how do I find other like minded individuals who are like this? Because once you start doing the work, you kind of feel like you're on an island.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But it's really about going, what are those characteristics of somebody who's done that work, of somebody who is in that same space? If you look at the characteristics of that person, it will lead you to where they are. So, for example, people who typically have done this work, they're going to events, they're going to personal development, self-help type of events to better themselves. So they have a different mindset and they have techniques that can help you. You have to look at the highest achievers around you, and you got to do a little homework there because that can often be like misleading. But look at those highest achievers and go, how are they doing it? Is it because they're showing up authentic? Is it because one of my favorite things is rewiring how your brain even thinks about a no or rejection? Those are the people that you want to be around, but you have to figure out what are they like? What are those characteristics and where are they most likely to hang out? We do this with clients every day, right? We have an ideal client profile and we go, well, if I really want to work with doctors, where would doctors go?
Yeah.
And then we go there. So if you really want to surround yourself with developed minds and people that have, genuine authenticity, where would they go? Who would they hang out with? Go from there.
Yeah. I've always found too that, asking, a colloquial question, um, you know, how are you? And having the person to take a moment and then answer the question for me is like a huge signal that they're
Mm.
mindful and thoughtful and are really seeing if you want to have a real conversation. What do you think about that?
I do. It's funny you say that because I'll often say to people, how are you? And then they'll answer me and I'll
Hi.
say, how are you really?
Yes.
And I always ask a second time. And you'll see people, I don't think it's intentionally that they don't want to tell you. It's just, again, the wiring that we have. 90% of our thoughts and our actions are subconscious. So we are like programmed subconsciously. I'm good. I'm well. I'm fine without even thinking about it.
Mhm.
So, tapping into that, but I think it can be a good indicator. But again, we have to really give some grace and go, majority of people are not self-aware. They are not present. So I like to give a second chance, ask a second time, and then see whether or not they're really going to engage in that conversation. Sometimes you'll get that, no, I'm good. And you're like, okay, well, that's as far as it's going to go.
Yeah. I and I used another word there that I really love, which is grace. And I really
Mm.
wish more people gave people that grace because grace, in my opinion, comes from not really knowing what happened 10 seconds before are interacting with that person. You don't know what journey they've been on. And having the lack of grace and that lack of understanding I think is actually a major problem in society personally. Um, and I think going into it with that level of understanding, empathy, and willingness to give those people grace is really powerful. Now I want to talk about process, okay? Because
Mm.
you have a freaking process. You built an entire program around this, and I'm not asking you to give your secret sauce away because, of course, I want everybody to hire you and go through your program. But let's go. So you talked about some of the morning routine stuff, right? What are some of the other things that you do that you have found that works really well, especially in financial services, that will allow advisors to start on this journey, but more importantly, maintain this difficult journey to figure out their non-negotiable you?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you some key steps and processes, the secret sauce. I'm going to give you it right here
Mhm. Thank
because
you.
I believe, yes, I want your people to embrace it. I want them to use it. And yes, if you want more, come see me. But first and foremost, you've got to rewire the thought that is holding you back. So, what we talked about earlier, the majority of people believe that their authentic self, their genuine self, is not going to generate more business and relationships than who they show up that the person needs. So we've got to rewire that. And every single day, so if you're listening, I want you to embrace a new thought that says, my genuine, authentic self is capable of creating more than any other person. And you have to start pounding that in your head every day. I need you to say it in the mirror. I need you to write it down as an affirmation. That's what starts rewiring our brain and opening up the door to even go into this process. If we don't do that, then we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot before we even get started. Once you start rewiring that process, then it becomes this next step of going, I need to become self aware. So you've got to do things to learn about yourself. And I'll give you a couple of them. One, take personality assessments. I love the Enneagram. I love the Strengths Finder. Learn about yourself. Look at an assessment that gives you a mirror. The other thing is ask yourself every single day, how do I feel? What do I want to do about it? Another great self-aware. Figure out what your values are. Know what you love, what fills you up, and how to make your decisions. So those are 3 ways that you can be self-aware. That right there, if we rewire the brain to accept this process, we get into the first step of becoming self-aware. Things are going to change drastically for you. You're going to start understanding who you are, and you're also going to start building your confidence because guess what? You're showing up for yourself every single day.
you I love the self check-in. You know, as a therapist, that was one of the things that we would do in therapy was we would ask, you know, how are you feeling? How did you feel about that? Let's go ahead and deconstruct that. But I don't think enough people know the power of checking in with yourself. We check in with everybody else. How are you doing? Right? Instead of
Yes.
saying, how am I doing?
Yep. And think about it. You check in with somebody. Why?
Because I want to know.
Because you want to know you care. So by default, if we're not checking in on ourselves, what are we saying?
Yeah.
That we don't care, that we don't want to know, that we don't matter. So then, if full circle here, we understand why we don't believe our genuine, authentic self is the best version because every day we say we don't care and we're not important. So we've got to flip that script. And when you start showing up for yourself every day, even with those 10 minutes, your brain starts to go, shoot, I do matter.
Yeah.
You're starting with me in the morning. You're asking me how I feel before any other email, text, client issue. You must care. And that's huge.
One of the things that I implemented about 3 years ago is when I go to bed, I check in with myself with the hats that I wear. So business owner, employer, team member, husband, father, uh, you know, son, brother, and I will ask myself, how did I do today? And then I don't leave it there because there's some days where yeah, I'm not batting 1,000 in all of those areas. And then I will say to myself, what can I do tomorrow to be better in that situation? And I love those sorts of check-ins, Angie. If there's one thing that anybody takes away from this show, if they just check in with themselves, first off, it makes you feel different. Would you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I know that you're so in the trenches with this. When you start having your clients and you start realizing that they're checking in with themselves, what do you see as the coach?
First of all, you can't unknow. So that's the
Mm,
beauty of all this self-awareness. Once you know and you keep up with that process consistently, it doesn't mean that the first time you know, you're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna change everything and I'm gonna get into action right
mm,
away. But eventually you keep getting that poke in the side, like you know something. And so most people that have that integrity, who have that will and desire, they're gonna start to do something about it. I read something the other day, a stat from a psychiatrist about a study she did, and said that 95% of people think that they're self-aware, and reality is only 15% of people are self-aware.
Oh,
Pretty shocking, right? Now I can't give you all the
oof.
basis of the study, but it really gives us an idea of the lack of self-awareness that is out there. So when you talk about this check-in process, you are activating that self-awareness. And then again, we're going into the space where you can't unknow. Our brains are wired to want to do something about problems and situations. Think about it. If I told you a problem right now, your brain would start going, how do I fix this for her?
That's
How
right.
do I solve this? What should I tell her? So when we start coaching ourselves like that at the end of the day, and I love your questions, I have these in my morning mindset journal. At the end of the day, it says, what got in the way for me?
Yeah.
What did I learn? You have these check-in that that gives you the opportunity to do something about it. That's empowerment. So what do I see as a coach? I see the light bulb going off.
Mm-hmm.
I see people providing that opportunity for themselves, just like they would if they were asking somebody else that question. And then as humans, we generally want to fix it. So we get into action.
When somebody, because this is never a process that's finished, so I'm trying to choose my words wisely there. Socrates and Plato and Aristotle said, the greatest journey you can ever take is within yourself, and the more you know about yourself, the happier you're going to be, and all of that sort of stuff. There comes a point where you start getting more comfortable with your you-ness, right? And we're a marketing company here, right? So we're a content marketing company, content creation company. How do you help your clients then be their own loud with it, right? How do you, or what sort of guidance do you give your clients when they have settled into themselves, and now they're going to start like doing that in the world of business? Where do you sit with any of that?
To me, it's a two-step process. First, you become the non-negotiable you. You do that work. Like you said, you settle in with it. You're like, I like who I am. I trust myself. I want to guide myself. Then you step into what I call choose your seat. And that's really about going, who do I want to be out there? What do I want to create? What do I want to make? The impact, the money, whatever way you want to look at it, you have to decide, what do you want in your life? And for these advisors out there, it's like, what kind of clients do you want? Do you want to see them in person every day? Do you want a less, hands-on business? You have to determine all of that, because now you actually have the power to act on it. Before you didn't. So getting into this process of choosing your seat is deciding what you want and then what kind of action you have to take on a daily basis in order to step into it. And action is much easier and more exciting when you know yourself, you believe in yourself, you trust yourself. So
Hmm.
it really becomes the self-discovery. Now let's get into action. Now you're equipped.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think, to be honest, I freaking love it. And like I came into the show and I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to ask her. And you've been saying these things, and I'm like, well, damn, that could be a whole nother episode right there with that one. But luckily you have a podcast. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because people are going to be able to go ahead and consume way more of your content and engage you and all of those sorts of things. But I want to ask you my favorite question that I
Sure.
don't always get to ask, but sometimes I do, which is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Ooh, wow, you really stumped me with that one, Matt.
Hmm.
Let's see. um, I think the question that I feel is most impactful for people is, why don't people live the life that they want? Why don't they create what they want?
All right, there you go. Answer the question.
I mean, I believe, and I think you believe this too, that we are truly capable of creating anything that we want. We have that ability. But why we don't do it is because we live kind of in this autopilot. We have been had narratives created for us from childhood, from past experiences, And we fall into this space where we believe that that is just the way things have to be. We resign to it. And so we think this, get up, rinse and repeat every single day. You run on the hamster wheel. You have to challenge that. You have to have another voice in your head that's going, doesn't have to be that way. And so I think that for people listening to this and walking away with something, know that just the way that you think, just the way that you feel doesn't have to be that way. You can challenge it. As a matter of fact, you have to challenge it if you want to create that. But that's really, truly what gets in the way for people. Don't just take what your mind feeds you. My gosh, be a filter.
Yeah.
Decide. I always say, that Willy Wonka movie, and they would have good egg, and bad egg.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you should be doing with your brain every single day. The thought comes up and it's like, man, I'll never be able to raise business. Bad thought, delete, right? You have to be the consumer of those thoughts and say whether you're keeping them or not. It all sits with that.
Yeah. When I first got introduced to neurolinguistic programming, I was so utterly resistant to it. And it's like, the brain is not that pliable. Oh, it's really pliable. Because you've already convinced yourself that you're thinking the way that you're thinking,
Right.
which in turn means you can probably think a different way. There's this great thing, and you just brought up a movie, so I'm gonna match you with a movie, even though I freaking love the Willy Wonka movies, all of them, all three of them, by the way. And James and the Giant Peach. So he's flying in the Peach across the Atlantic Ocean to go to New York City. And his parents got killed in an unfortunate rhinoceros attack from a rhinoceros that got escaped from the zoo. And he's standing and the storm's rolling in, and he's getting very, very, very scared. And a rhino comes out of the clouds, and he's like, oh, it's his parents, and he's got all of these things, and the grasshopper starts screaming, look at it in a different way. Oh my gosh, we can look at everything in such a different way. We just have to give ourselves the opportunity to do that. And what I love about your system is it's about the practice and the reinforcement of continually doing the work, because it is not something when that bad, the bad idea flies in and you hit delete. That doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It means it's gone now. So
you got it.
Being able to have the opportunity to continuously rinse, lather, and repeat, something we say a lot here about content, is also very important about your own self-awareness and your own journey. All right, Angie, well, I'm sure that there are going to be people who want to engage you. Where should they go? What should they do? And more importantly, who do you want to reach out to you so that we're actually hopefully sending you the people who are your ideal client?
Love that question, Matt. Thank you. You can find me almost anywhere online under Angie Wisdom. It is not a very common name, and it is actually my last name. Angie Wisdom Life Coach on Instagram, on YouTube, LinkedIn, all over the place there. I put a ton of free content out. Happy to hear from you there. And there's a newsletter on my website as well. You can get my book, my journal on my line as online as well on my website. And as far as who reaches out to me, this is going to sound crazy, but motivated professionals looking to create what they want. I say motivated and you think like, well, of course, but some people are not so motivated. They want it, but they're not motivated.
I used to call them assholes when I was a life coach. So people who ask for my opinions and my advice, who don't implement it and then blame me for the lack of results. And so I joke a lot about the fact I'm a recovering life coach because, man, as you do, we see, right? And we try to be the mirror to hold it up to our clients so that they can hopefully see themselves. But a lot of people just don't want to look in the mirror. So Angie, listen, first off, I'm incredibly grateful for you allowing me to come on your show. Thank you very much for the wisdom that you passed on today. And please, everybody, of course, all of her links are going to be in the show notes, but it's really simple. If you literally type in Angie Wisdom, everything that she says, your SEO is amazing, sister. You've got that dialed in, and everybody's going to be able to find you. So if you really want to figure out what you can do to give yourself this gift that we have talked about for over 480 episodes of rising above the noise and being your own loud, please connect with Angie. please buy her book, please listen to her podcast, and please consume her content. Because when you give yourself that gift, everything that we hear that we do for you at ProudMouth gets amplified 100 times, 1,000 times. Your content creation is going to be easier. Your podcast is going to be easier. It's going to be easier for people to refer to you because they actually know who you are, not just what you do. So for Angie and all of us here at ProudMouth, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.